I don't remember much from my early childhood. Just fragments of memories that feel more like nightmares, being left alone for hours in soiled diapers, my mother's harsh words cutting deeper than most of her physical pain, and the constant feeling that I wasn't wanted. That was my reality growing up in a small town, with no relatives available to help me. Hello. My name is... Well, I used to be Michael Aaron Ingalls, but I changed that during my senior year at Wharton. I'm 39 now, and I hold a master's degree in business and another in finance. In this story I'll tell you why I changed my name and the events leading up to doing it. Please help the channel by leaving a comment and a book emoji. I like education and think that's appropriate. My mother moved us to southern Nevada when I was 3. I later learned this was to escape from people looking for me, but at the time I just knew we were alone. No grandparents, no cousins, no extended family ever visited. It was just her and me in a relationship that could barely be called maternal. The physical abuse started early, slaps that gradually became punches, being locked in closets for misbehaving, and nights spent hungry because I had somehow disappointed her. The verbal abuse was constant, her words becoming the voice in my head that often invaded my sleep. Worthless, burden, mistake. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother, the only person in my world who was supposed to love me unconditionally. School became my sanctuary. I excelled academically, partly because I was naturally inclined toward mathematics and partly because I'd do anything to avoid going home. Teachers would occasionally notice bruises or my withdrawn behavior and alert my mother, who was skilled at deflection. Several times, she moved us to a different school district whenever too many questions were asked. Diane Ingalls stopped paying for anything I needed when I was 15 and informed her that I got a job in a department store on afternoons and weekends. Finally, she said, "Make sure you buy your groceries and shit and don't touch anything I buy." On payday, I'd split my earnings and usually only had enough for bus fare after I bought food, personal care items, clothes, and shoes. The first time I slid my feet into new shoes that fit my feet like they were made specifically for me, I cried. My mother had never bought me anything new and my clothes were always too big and my shoes were always too tight or my big toes hit the top of the shoe. We were at a local thrift store each time something had the nerve to not grow with me. As for food, the woman mostly served me cereal. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, a cold bowl sat in front of me and if I complained I was put in the closet. Several times I begged her to let me out to go to the bathroom, but she never would, and when I soiled myself after I could no longer hold it in, she made me sit in it until the smell made her gag. Once she used a belt on me when I was fresh from the bath. I don't know how no one heard my screams from that pain. Eventually she moved on to ramen, but only after rambling and screaming about the price of milk. When I got my job and heard her demand that I buy my own food, I vowed never to buy cold cereal, milk, and ramen regardless of the flavor. Instead, I purchased mostly microwavable items that were dirt cheap or on clearance, and more times than I could count, I noted some items were missing or worse, watched in disbelief as she devoured something I'd bought. Once, it was a chicken pot pie that was for the microwave because I was never allowed to touch the stove even at 15. She had obviously had a bath. Diane was wearing a robe while eating slowly at the kitchen table and perusing her cell. She was also sipping my last bottle of apple juice. "Mom," I said, glaring at her. "That's mine." "So," she snapped and stood with blazing brown eyes. She slapped my face and snarled, "You don't touch what I buy, but I will have anything I want in this house because I pay all the bills. Don't let me have to remind you again." She sat down again, had a bite of food and spit it out. "Now it's cold, damn it." I watched in disbelief as she threw the container filled with uneaten food in the trash, finished the juice and left the kitchen. My stomach growled. The only thing I had left in the house was a bag of chips, but she had a kitchen filled with several things, and I was so tempted to snatch something. At 15 she was several inches shorter than me and though I was thin, I believed I could handle her. Instead, not wanting to be homeless as she had always threatened, I ate the small bag of chips and a glass of water, then sat in the living room, which was also my bedroom because I had to sleep on the couch in a house with 3 bedrooms, to start my homework. 30 minutes later, the bell rang. Mom, who had been sitting in a chair oiling her deep brown skin, answered it, thanked whomever it was and left the room. I heard water running and knew she was washing her hands. When she returned to the living room, she sat in the recliner in front of the TV and set up a tray in front of her. She had ordered food from the deli and ate the sandwich, soup, and salad while watching a Brad Pitt movie. Watching her, all I heard was my stomach growl. She didn't buy me anything and she didn't share. I went to bed with just that small bag of chips and a glass of water in my belly. And I prayed for the next day to get there fast so I could get breakfast at school, which thankfully was free. Well, I was going to eat double of whatever they served. That was the way I survived my teen years with that woman. The day I left home at 18 was the day I finally breathed. I graduated salutatorian with only my friends to cheer my achievement, and during senior year, I had only applied to colleges thousands of miles away and received a partial scholarship that would carry me through my first 2 years at Wharton on the East Coast. I packed what little I owned, dropped the house keys on the coffee table, and left without saying goodbye to hitch a ride with several others attending college in the same area. She didn't try to stop me, perhaps she was as relieved to see me go as I was to leave. I never called. Never wrote. Never looked back. Neither did she, but I didn't tell her which college I had chosen. I was sure she wouldn't care. She never showed that she did in any way. The distance didn't heal the wounds, but it gave me space to build a life that was mine. I worked hard, maintained my scholarship, and took on tutoring jobs to cover my other expenses. I was determined to succeed, if only to prove to myself that she had been wrong about me my entire life. By my 3rd year, I had established myself as one of the top math tutors in the area. The income from tutoring, combined with my job at a fast food restaurant, allowed me to build a strong client base over the past 2 years, enabling me to pay my junior year's tuition in cash. I managed to do this because I lived quite frugally, a lifestyle that I found easy to live since I had already lived it. It was during this time that Sienna Milner entered my life. She was a freshman at U of P, struggling with calculus, and in need of assistance to maintain her GPA. There was something familiar about her that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Perhaps it was the shape of her eyes or the way she gestured when explaining a concept she had finally grasped. After a 5th weekly session, Sienna looked at me differently with a tilted head as if trying to solve a puzzle. "I think we might be related," she said, the words hanging between us like a question mark. "I'm thinking you're a distant cousin." I laughed it off. "I'm the only child of a single mom. My father's in the wind and I don't know much about him." I thought a moment. "Well, maybe it's possible. Why do you think we're related?" "You look exactly like my uncle," she insisted. "Same features, same smile. Even the way you explain things reminds me of him. He's a financial analyst, good with numbers too. I noticed it when we met, but without the beard, it's even more pronounced." I dismissed it as a coincidence, but she was persistent. Sienna showed me family photos on her phone, and I couldn't deny the resemblance between me and the man she called her uncle. Something shifted inside me, a possibility I had never considered. What if this man were my father? Mom had said that he was a Caucasian man who lived east, and he left her when the stick turned blue, and she never saw him again. His ethnicity was all she shared about him. She wouldn't even tell me his name. Sienna asked to take a picture of me because she insisted her uncle needed to see the resemblance, and her mom was going to freak out knowing her brother had another doppelganger, after explaining his son looked a lot like him. She smiled with me, snapped the picture with her cell phone and sent it in a text. I left her and went to my fast food job. When spring break arrived, Sienna informed me that she had arranged for her uncle to meet us at a local eatery that I believed would cost me 2 weeks of my earnings for a glass of water. She noticed my trepidation and insisted the bill would be covered. I was their guest. I finally agreed, more out of curiosity than genuine belief in her theory. Sienna and I arrived first and were seated in a far corner, away from most diners. Her cell pinged and she explained that her uncle was driving in from Soho in New York, where he lived, and was running late, but told us to order something while we waited. He had already informed the restaurant and gave them his card. I nodded and we ordered appetizers while we waited. Sienna and I were talking about classes and she made me laugh with her impression of a professor, and that was the moment I saw him walk through the door. My heart started racing, staring at him as the hostess led him our way. It was like looking at an older version of myself. Same jawline, same slight asymmetry to the smile, same way of walking. The only differences were my youth and slightly darker skin tone. He stopped short when he saw me, his face draining of color. "Jameson," he whispered, using a name I'd never been called. "Michael," I corrected. He sat down and all 3 of us were tense with anticipation. Sienna held his hand until his breathing evened while his hazel eyes stayed on me. He drank the entire glass of water Sienna pressed into his hand, took a deep breath and gripped his niece's hand. Several beats later he regaled me with a story that sounded like something from a crime drama, not real life. "I married my high school sweetheart right after graduation," he started gently. "Our parents weren't happy about it, but they supported the decision after we promised to finish college before starting a family. We were young and in love, but as time passed we grew apart." Asha revealed that she never wanted children, which became a major point of contention between us. I wanted them, but she wouldn't change her mind, so as I completed my master's degree we divorced. He paused, taking a sip of water with a shaking hand before continuing. 2 years later I remarried. Like Asha, Tamala was African American, and that was their only similarity. Tam came across as a wonderful being, kind, loving, everything I could have hoped for after the way my first marriage ended. My parents loved her too, and we were blessed with a son during our first year of marriage. We named him after my father. His voice cracked as he continued. When our boy was 5 months old, we put him to bed one night and by morning he was gone. He just vanished from his crib. We searched everywhere, called the police, and launched a nationwide manhunt. For 2 years we followed every lead and hired private investigators. Finally, just after what would have been his 3rd birthday, we got information that he was tracked to Texas, but by the time authorities arrived, they had disappeared. I sat frozen, trying to process what I was hearing. Tamala was never the same after that, he continued. She fell into a deep depression. Eventually, after intense therapy, she wanted to try again, to have another child. She became almost obsessed with the idea, as if a new baby might heal her broken heart. When she got pregnant, she was ecstatic but also terrified. She spared no expense while she had a company install elaborate security systems and cameras everywhere. He looked down at his hands. We had another son. Tamala wouldn't let him out of her sight, not even to sleep. He spent the first year of his life sleeping on her chest. But as he grew, he began to look more like our first son, and it triggered something in Tamala. Her depression returned, worse than before. Therapy didn't help this time. Shortly before our second son turned 3, He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. I understood anyway, but Sienna mouthed what this man couldn't say. I gasped in shock and sadness. His wife had taken her own life. I'm sorry for your loss, sir, but I don't understand, I said, my voice barely audible. What does this have to do with me? You are my son. He looked me directly in the eyes. I believe you are Jameson Michael Caldwell, the son who was taken from us. I shook my head, rejecting his words even as a part of me recognized their truth. On the back of your left ankle, is there a large dark brown birthmark that resembles a potato with a head? I nodded with a scowl. Yes, but I can't be your son. My mother's name is Diane Ingalls and I've been with her my entire life. I showed him a picture of my mother from her LinkedIn account, showing she was a loan officer at a bank in Henderson, Nevada. Diane? This is my ex-wife, Asha Reynolds, he finished. She had to be the one who kidnapped you, possibly out of revenge. Damn it, I don't think we ever considered her. She left town soon after signing the divorce papers, and I never saw or heard from her again. I agreed to a DNA test and left that lunch in a daze, my entire identity shattered. The woman who had abused me for 18 years wasn't just a terrible mother, she wasn't my mother at all. Was she my kidnapper? After the expedited test came back with a positive match, I felt like I wanted to hurl. That woman was not my mother. I felt relieved and betrayed and took some time for myself. I shut out the world, no phone, no classes, no job. I couldn't grasp the new knowledge and wanted to hit something. Unbathed, unkempt, and still raging, I saw a school psychologist who successfully talked me down after insisting that I had a right to my feelings. A week of sessions later, she suggested I take a long bath, change clothes, and confront the woman whom I thought was my mother. I dipped into my savings and flew back to Nevada during the break, driven by a rage I had never allowed myself to feel before. She was living in the same house where I'd grown up, looking older but no less cold than I remembered. What are you doing here, Michael? She demanded, not inviting me in. I pushed past her into the living room. We need to talk. She slammed the door. About what? 3 years ago, you made it clear you wanted nothing to do with me when you left, as you didn't bother to tell me where you were going. I assumed that was going to continue until one of us dies. Well, you know what they say about assuming, I snorted, my voice shaky. I'm here to discuss the way you treated me, mainly the years of abuse. Let's start with you leaving me in dirty diapers for hours as a baby, leaving me with a painful rash several times that I can still remember, and hitting me sometimes while telling me that I was worthless, stupid, and not worth breathing air. Then we'll move on to starving me. She scoffed. I put a roof over your head, clothed you, and sent you to school. Not every mother is going to coddle her child. Is that what you call not abusing a child? Coddling, I shouted. You were supposed to love me. That's what mothers do. I never asked to be your mother, she snapped back. No, I said quietly. You didn't, but you weren't supposed to be mine. Isn't that right, Asha? At the sound of her real name, a name she had never used around me, she froze, panic flickering across her face. How do you know that name? She whispered. I met Gordon Michael Caldwell, I said, watching her carefully. Fuck. She collapsed onto the couch, her defiance crumbling. He found you. No, his niece found me. We looked too much alike to ignore the truth, and he knew about the mark on my ankle that you ridiculed so many times, but I stupidly didn't believe it until the DNA report came back. You have looked like that man all your damn life. I snorted at her comment and said, I cannot believe you kidnapped a child just to browbeat him into submission and neglect him in every way possible. What the hell was your problem, Asha? Why was I treated so horribly? After a long silence, she began to speak, her voice hollow. Your face. I hated to look at it, the spitting image of the man I loved who no longer wanted me just for me. Why he was so bent on having kids, I'll never know. That man practically begged me to have at least 2 with him, and I never even wanted to have one. It all became worse when his stupid older sister had her first. Night after night, begging, pleading, threatening. And his damn parents with their shit. Christ, I couldn't get out of there fast enough after that divorce was finalized. My breathing deepened. She continued, I was so angry after the divorce. He got everything, the house, the cars, and the money. He left me with a settlement that barely covered my rent. Then he remarried so quickly to that perfect little homemaker. When I heard they had a baby, something inside me snapped. She laughed bitterly. He never even changed the locks. I still had a key from when we were married. I went there one night, not even sure what I was planning to do. Just wanting to see what my replacement had created. I almost changed my mind when I saw you. I never wanted children, never knew what to do with them. Then why take me? I asked. Why not leave me with the parents who wanted me, Asha? Her eyes hardened. I walked through that quiet house, the house that had been mine first, and all traces of me were gone. 5 years of marriage erased. New paint, new furniture, pictures of them everywhere. She'd completely replaced me and he had let it happen. That's when I decided. If she could take everything from me, I could take everything from her. I couldn't believe her words. So I was just a tool for revenge? Not even a person to you? Did I ever mean anything to you, Asha? Do you even have a drop of love for me? With hard, burning eyes, she replied in a cold tone, no. I couldn't do anything but shake my head and try to control my emotions. I bent to her eye level and asked, after you scared the shit out of them, why not return me? You didn't want children, and I was a daily reminder of the man who no longer wanted you, so why keep me? Fear. She looked away. The crime of kidnapping carries a lengthy sentence. I did not want to go to jail. I squatted and asked, so how did we end up here? I took you to my parents' home in Arizona first. They accepted you, loved you, but knew you couldn't be from Donnie. I mean Gordon, the timing was impossible and they knew about his new marriage. But they helped anyway. My sister too. I said your father didn't stick around, and that's why I never told them of a pregnancy. I named you Michael Aaron, and that's all the information I gave them. We would have stayed there, but then the investigators started closing in, and all 3 started to question everything, including my maternal instincts and lack of knowledge when it came to basic childcare. Damn diaper rashes were going to be the end of me in their eyes. My mother had just toilet-trained you when I sneaked out in the middle of the night and drove us to Nevada, and I shut myself away from my family. I couldn't risk them knowing what I had done after I claimed you as mine. You never saw them again? Are they alive? Diane/Asha answered, my sister married 18 months after I left and had 4 boys. Mom died 15 years ago, and my father wouldn't know me if I stood in front of him with a sign declaring my name, age, and birth date. He has advanced dementia. I shook my head and stood while asking, how the hell do you have a birth certificate and a social security card with the name you gave me? Where did they come from? All these fucking questions. Christ, why did you ever learn to talk? Answer me, I roared. A year before that night, a family died in the next town over and You took their identities. Diane Sherelle Ingalls and Michael Aaron Ingalls were killed, and you just stole their information. Yes, I did, just to survive, and I did well even with you in the picture. I stared at her. I have no idea who you are, Asha, but I'm glad you and I do not share the same blood. Diane/Asha shouted, I did all I did because I still loved that man after all was said and done, but I had to punish him and that stupid wife of his, my mediocre replacement. That great woman was my mother, a woman who was so devastated at my disappearance that she went into a depression and ended her life after having another child who looked too much like me to bear. Did you know that? Do you even care that I'll never meet my real mother? Asha's deep brown eyes filled with tears, and I had no idea what to do with her showing emotion, until I realized that she hadn't said she was sorry. I studied her, wondering if it was only because she was caught. Her next words chilled me to the bone, and all I could do was shake my head. "I'll see her in hell then." Before I could respond, there was banging at the door. When she opened it, 2 police officers stood there with Gordon behind them. Someone, likely Sienna, had contacted authorities in Nevada. As they handcuffed her, she looked at me with what appeared to be genuine remorse for the first time in my life. "I didn't know how to be a mother. I never wanted to be one." "Then you should have left me with the one who did," I replied as they led her away. I flew back east with Gordon the next day, my feelings a tangled mess. He stared at me but mostly stayed quiet. The woman I had called mother had never been that in any true sense of the word. She had been my captor, my abuser, but never my mother. She had been my captor, my abuser, but never my mother. When we arrived back on the East Coast, Gordon took me to his home, a spacious house in Soho that felt both welcoming and alien. There, I met my brother for the first time. At 17, Jeffrey Gordon Caldwell was just 4 years younger than me, and the family resemblance was undeniable. We were both clearly our father's sons. I spent the night there, and after a hearty breakfast, the 3 of us drove to Greenwich, Connecticut, so that I could meet my grandparents who lived on an astounding estate. They were in their 70s but embraced me with a vigor that belied their age. My grandmother held my face in her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We never gave up hope," she whispered. "Never." They told me about Tamala, my real mother, and showed me pictures of her, several with her holding me as a baby, her face radiant with love. They shared stories of how my maternal grandparents had searched for me until their dying days, never losing faith that I would be found alive. Then came the most shocking revelation of all. "Your trust fund is still intact," Jameson Edward Caldwell stated. "Your mother's family was in shipping and they were quite successful. Your share of the inheritance has been held in trust all these years. It's grown significantly, currently valued at about $61 million. You've been able to access it since you turned 18. I've made a fortune in the stock market and my boy has expanded my financial profile, so there's that money too." I stared at him in disbelief. Not only had I discovered my true identity and family, but I was apparently wealthy beyond anything I could have imagined. I would never have to worry about tuition or student loans again. I could complete my education, pursue a master's degree, and follow in my father's footsteps if I wanted to. My father proudly slapped my shoulder. "First thing in the morning, we'll contact the lawyers. We need to change your name officially." My little brother nodded. "And not a minute too soon. Again, welcome back, brother." In the weeks that followed, as Diane/Asha awaited trial, she called and sent messages constantly. She begged for help with her legal fees, reminded me that she had raised me, and suggested that I owed her for her years of care. Each message mentioned my inheritance, making her motivations transparent. I never responded. Whatever obligation I might have felt toward her dissolved with each self-serving plea. She hadn't kidnapped me out of misplaced love, she had done it out of hate for my mother and father. And then, having taken me, she hadn't even tried to love me. I owed her nothing. I visited my mother's grave, bringing flowers and sitting beside the headstone for hours, telling her about my life, apologizing for the pain Diane/Asha had caused, and vowing to be the man she would have wanted me to be. I promised to look after Jeffrey, to honor the name she had given me by legally reclaiming it, and to never again have contact with the woman who had stolen me from her. 11 months later, Diane was convicted of kidnapping and sentenced to 11 years without the possibility of parole. I watched the verdict being read with my father and brother beside me, not feeling satisfaction but a strange sense of closure. True to my promise, I legally changed my name from the one Diane/Asha had given me back to Jameson Michael Caldwell. I finished my undergraduate degree and went on to earn a master's in business and finance, following somewhat in my father's footsteps while finding my own path. I became the CEO of my grandfather's shipping company, thinking that would make my maternal family happy. I enjoyed the job and the fact that I hired a good team to help me grow what was now named Taylor Made Industries, after my mother, Tamala Madeline Taylor Caldwell. Her portrait hangs proudly in the lobby, and a smaller one hangs in my office, and all I have to do is look up to see her beautiful face. 7 years after discovering my true identity, I attended James's college graduation. There, I met Robin, a junior professor of his at Columbia University. She was brilliant, compassionate, and made me laugh in a way no one else ever had. We dated for 3 years, always meeting at my modest one-bedroom apartment or at casual restaurants. I wanted to be sure she loved me for who I was, not what I had, and had asked my family to participate. They understood. When we met, it was at my cramped place rather than gathering at my father's mansion or my grandparents' estate. When I finally proposed and she accepted, I took her to my grandparents' estate for the first time. Her jaw dropped as we drove through the gates. "Why are we at this estate?" she asked, confused. "To tell my grandparents our news," I replied. Her eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Your grandparents? You're still the same person you fell in love with," I assured her. "Just with resources I didn't tell you about." She punched my arm lightly and said, "You could have mentioned that you came from people who called a place like this home." "Would it have changed anything?" I asked. She considered this, then shook her head. "No. But it might have changed where we went for our third date. That Italian place was terrible." I laughed, relief washing over me. "I'll make it up to you. Promise." As we walked hand in hand toward the house where my family waited to celebrate with us, I reflected on the strange, painful journey that had brought me here. The woman who kidnapped me had wanted to destroy a family. Instead, though it took 21 years, she had ultimately failed. Our family was whole again, stronger for having been broken, and I was finally truly home. Writing this was hard, and as I bounced my daughter Tamala on my knee, who came to us after 4 boys, I always feel grateful that I'm able to see them grow, that there's no one around who can get close enough to look at my boys without the permission from my wife and me. The only ones who can enter our gates without an interrogation are my dad, brother, his wife Sheila, my grandparents, dad's sister, and my cousins, especially Sienna, who took one look at me and connected me to the loving family I never knew I was missing but missed me with their all for 21 long years. I will always be grateful to her and her diligence.